Thank you so much for coming. If we could all just give a very warm Mancunian welcome to Tommie Smith and his wife, Dolores. Thank you so much for coming. It's great to see so many people here, and I'm so happy to have Tommie Smith here with us today. This is the latest installment in our annual Arthur Lewis Lecture Series. Arthur Lewis, who's that chap there, was a professor of economics at the university and a Nobel Prize winner. When he was made professor here in 1948, he was Britain's first black professor. This year's Arthur Lewis Lecture is slightly unusual in that it's not a lecture. So what's going to happen, just to remind people, is there'll be some introductions, then we're going to show a short documentary movie that lasts about 45 minutes, and then there'll be a discussion between Tommie Smith and Michelle Moore, and then there'll be a little bit of, if we've got time, a little bit of audience Q&A. The other reason this is unusual is that it's a kind of collaborative effort between us in the School of Social Sciences here at Manchester and the Runnymede Trust and Voices for Change. And so I'm now just going to hand you over to Omar Khan from Runnymede to say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. We've done quite a bit of work with the university and with Kunle from Voice for Change, but this is obviously probably the most inspirational event that I've been part of anyways in the over a decade that I've worked at Runnymede. I just thought I'd say something really briefly about Runnymede. It's actually our 50th anniversary this month as well. So the Runnymede Trust was founded in October 1968, and we were founded to nail the lie on racism. And generally speaking, we do that more through research and evidence and trying to make the best arguments we can. And I think that's good work. I obviously am proud of what we do, but that research, that evidence on ethnic inequalities, on racial discrimination in the labor market, can only go so far without activism, without people changing their minds, and without people being inspired. And Tommie Smith is, I think, one of the people who inspired people throughout the world, including here in Britain, to do more than just collect evidence, but to challenge racism in their day-to-day lives. So that's all I'm going to say. I just want to thank Manchester and Kunle from Voice for Change, who's about to come up and introduce the film. And I'm looking forward to tonight, as I'm sure all of you are too. Thanks.
Okay, 1968. What a year, and what a year for students. The question of struggle and race is epitomized in the protests of John Carlos and Tommie Smith at the Mexico Olympics of 1968. But the year itself lies as a kind of iconic tribute to the question of human struggle. Apart from the question of the Mexico Olympics, we had the struggles of students in the universities across the campuses of the USA, the student revolts in Paris, a war developing in Vietnam, and struggles in Rhodesia and South Africa. And then came October, that glorious so-called Summer Olympics, which took place in October. Two young men, one of which is 23, going on 24, at the height of his powers, held 11 world records, decided as part of a human rights protest. And in the film you're about to see, you will get the correct context in terms of which this struggle was set. decided to actually put on the line their whole careers in order to make a point about the struggle for racial justice in America. The film focuses on a time during, I think it's 2009. It's the first time that Tommie and John Carlos have gone back to Mexico City since that time. They will outline for you what happened in terms of why they did it, what the consequences were, and their view of whether it was still the right thing to do. But I think more importantly, it is, I suppose, a signifier, really, to you as young students and activists today in terms of what it takes. Not everybody can be John Carlos and Tommie Smith, but certainly we can learn the lessons and use that maybe to ignite something that is going to transform society in the future. Voice for Change is an organization which is committed to the engagement of all people in civil society, but particularly Black and minority ethnic people, whether that be through political discourse, through their economic role, but we have to make sure that the question of equity and equality is seen throughout this society and also internationally. And I think tonight we're going to have an opportunity to really grasp that issues and the issues that are thrown up by what these two men principally, but also with the additional support of Peter Norman, who should also not be forgotten in the context of what we're about to see tonight. So without further ado, let's roll the film. Thank you. We're here today in Black History Month to honor Arthur Lewis, an innovator in the field of social science. And in terms of 1968, innovation is also a theme that was carried. Through the leap of Bob Beamon, the technical excellence of Dick Fosbury and the Fosbury flop, and the first man to run under 20 seconds for the 200 meters, Tommie Smith. We have another innovator, Michelle Moore, who some of you will have seen recently in the commentary around the treatment of Serena Williams and her interesting take on how to deal with umpires. Michelle is a trustee of the Runnymede Trust, and I congratulate you from Voice for Change for the longevity of the organization and your ability also to innovate in your research and policy work. And Omar, love to you guys. Michelle is now going to lead us in introducing Tommie to you, to get a bit more background. I'm sure that the film has evoked some thoughts and comments that you'll like to make. But now I'm going to hand you over to Michelle.
Thank you, Kunle. Can everyone hear me? Good evening, Manchester. How are we doing? We good? Oh, no, I can't hear you. Are we good? Great. So it is my extreme honor to be here, and I have dabbled in athletics myself, and I have had a picture of Tommie Smith and John Carlos and Peter Norman on my bedroom wall for about 25 years. So I am humbled to be doing this. My heart is full and my voice is trembling because we are in the presence of greatness. And we will be having an intellectual and sporting discussion. We are celebrating Black excellence and Black achievement. But most of all, we are here together today as a team. I do speak in sporting analogies, so forgive me. We will do this together. We are on a journey, and I'm going to take you through an informal conversation, because I think that's always best. And I'm just going to try and curate it, a discussion with Tommie. I'm wearing my Tommie Smith t-shirt. I am feeling empowered. I'm supporting black business. My friend did this for me last night. I picked it up at midnight. So we are going to go on a journey together. It's a pleasure and an honour to welcome Tommie and Dolores, his wife, to Manchester University. We cannot forget the symbolism of that iconic symbol of the salute. We cannot underestimate its impact in terms of its reach and in terms of its power. It stood for truth, it stood for justice, and it stood for human rights. And Tommie Smith and John Carlos have done lots to show us the true meaning of courage. And when they took their places on the rostrum, what they did is they showed us how sport, politics, and human rights and race collides. And we're often reminded in everyday life of how important sport is in terms of its reach. And that salute is just as important today as it was back in 1968 on the 16th of October in Mexico City. It stood for truth, and it stood for what we're going to talk about today in terms of what equality truly means. Tommie has suffered, he has sacrificed, he has endured, but he has triumphed, and he is still on fire with a smile on his face. Can you please give a very, very warm welcome? We are in the presence of greatness to Tommie Smith.
Thank you. Very well done. Very well done.
We're ready. It's like warming up for a race.
That's right, that's right.
Okay, so, Tommie, we've seen the amazing film. Can you take us back to those early days, growing up in Texas, in California? What was it like for you, and how did that impact on you later on in life?
Oh, goodness, good question. First of all, thank you for being here tonight in School of Social Science. In fact, that was my major in college, social sciences. The film you just saw, I'm sitting there almost crying all over again, especially at the end, because I remember those last steps, and I remember that smile on the face was a genuine smile. That smile was a lifelong smile for Tommie Smith. From the days, from your question, from the days of a child in the cotton fields of North Texas, with my dad out front working on 2 rows of cotton, and my mother in the back with my younger brother on her sack, pulling it down the cotton row as she picked cotton, and I'm back there trying to steal both of their cotton so I make my sack bigger. I've always been trying to be ahead of things. But that victory stand was a portrait of my life. And the aftermath, like people sitting here, make me feel especially privileged, because you came to history, which makes me feel worthy of that sacrifice. Not just for Tommie Smith, but for the younger generation. I see a whole lot of younger generations out there. In fact, they call me an OG, and because they're right, I am an OG, but an educated OG, which is even better, you know. So, Michelle, we're going to have a good conversation today. We're going to conversate. So you're going to ask me some questions. Yes, I'm going to answer them, but in that answering, I want you to keep things in mind. So after we finish conversating, I think you're going to have a surprise for everybody, because you're going to ask me to answer questions, which I'm never was good at.
So when did you start athletics? Or what age, and how did you, because it wasn't just athletics that you were...
You know, Michelle, it wasn't when I started, it was that I started a long time ago and not realizing what I was doing in the fields, working nights in the field, 12 hours. I'm doing this at 12 years old now, because I was 6 feet. I was 6'1" at 12 years old. 14, I was 6 feet 2 inches tall. So I got a full day's pay just from my size, not my age. That's when my daddy kept me around very close. Boy, come on, let's go to work. Oh, no, I'm not working again. So I said, I sure wish I was 5'6" and not 6'2". But my entire life growing up prepared me for a task. prepared me for a social war, but I didn't know it until I began to escalate through grammar school, through high school. I didn't think I was a fast athlete, but a fast person. But I noticed every time I ran, I would have to wait for a few people to finish the race. And I said, well, I must be pretty good. My sister Sally was a twin or just above me, and she would always beat me she would beat me for no reason. So some of you guys out there who had sisters who beat you, I was the first one, okay, that got beat by my sister. She had a race with me when she was in 4th grade, and the principal was starting a AAU team, AAU back in the day when you didn't get paid. We were going to Bakersfield, California for an AAU meet, and I was in Lemoore, California, which is only 60 miles away. I didn't know what an AAU was, but it kept me out of the fields, okay? The principal of the school asked my dad, Richard, could Tommie be excused this Saturday from going to the fields with you and the kids? There's a meet in Bakersfield, and I'd like for him to run. Daddy said, meat? The only meat I know is out there on them hogs I got. That's meat, because the kid had to feed the hogs every morning. I'm sitting back in a toiletless house, wondering if he's going to let me out this weekend to go run in a track meet. And he did. He said, yeah, Mr. Fufa, he can go this weekend. And he turned and looked at me, and he pointed a finger. And he came closer to me, and he said, boy, I'm gonna go let you run this weekend. I'm saying, yes. But if you take 2nd place, you'll be back out in the field next Saturday with the rest of your brothers and sisters. That was my impetus to keep going.
Motivation.
That's right.
Motivation,
Great motivation.
Yeah.
And I hardly ever lost a race. Every time I won a race, a big old smile come across my face, just like you saw up there at the finish. Don't have to go to the fields no more. But I stayed in class, stayed in my classes, so I wouldn't have to go back to the fields. That was my generation to keep on going. Impetus to work harder, to keep from.
So it's a kind of a way out of poverty for you. That was your escape going into.
That was my escape, but with that escape, Michelle, you know there's an educational propriety there, because going on a scholarship, you have to maintain a 2.0 to compete.
Yeah.
So that also kept me studying.
Great.
To get the
and
education.
so then when you got to San Jose College, how did your relationship with Dr. Harry Edwards, who was behind the Olympic Project for Human Rights, how did that develop, and what was it like there at that time?
Well, when I walked on the airport at San Jose, the city of San Jose, Harry was standing outside. You know, the airport was about that big. You know, San Jose wasn't very big then. And first thing he did, he looked at me and he laughed. He laughed. Now Harry is 6'8", 260 pounds. I was about 6'3", 165. So I let him laugh. And he says, you Smith? I said, yes, I am. He said, you know, I expected for you to look like you look, because I went to Fresno City College. I was raised around Fresno. He said, but let me tell you something. He said, you come here to run, but if you don't go to class, I'm the one who's gonna kick your ass. I said, okay. So I carried my books everywhere I went, and I did not miss a class, although I didn't understand what the teacher was talking about, but I did go to class. And I did maintain a C+ average.
Well done.
Thank you very much. And he was always around me. Dr. Edwards was always moving in and out. I didn't like him.
You didn't like him?
No, he's too big.
Oh.
Yeah.
and so that relationship was pivotal, though, in terms of the education piece around the Black Freedom Movement and how the Olympic Project for Human Rights developed. And so that work around the boycott in the year ahead of the 68 Games, can you tell us a little bit
certainly.
about that?
Harry was from East St. Louis. He had a very indicative background of what I went through. And he started a project called the OPHR, or the Olympic Project for Human Rights. He graduated, got his degrees, came back and became an instructor at San Jose State. I was still there because I was 3 years behind him. So I was a senior, just getting ready to get out of school. He came back and taught a class at San Jose State University. And he knew that what he left was the remnants before he went off to school of what he came back to. And that was the development of athletes who was at the height of their career. I held 11 more records as a junior in college I think more world records than any man or woman in track and field history. And the old man here still holds three. Can't even count. Three. Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
I got
Cool,
it?
yeah.
Okay, I just want the wrong finger to pop up. Okay.
We'll forgive you. You're a legend. It's all right.
We are conversating, huh?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
We said we would.
we said we would, so listen to us. So I got involved because I owed it, being blessed to be one of the faster athletes, the fastest athletes in two events, the 400 and the 200. I held the world records in both at the same time. I felt it necessary for me to open my mind, my mouth, because I did not talk in college. I mean, that's a shame. I run my mouth now, but in college, I was more used to studying and listening and realizing that, seeing is believing. If you think you got it, be quiet enough to show it. And that's what I did. And I was classified as sneaky because I never said it. I would watch you. All the other athletes would be, and there are some of you out there, and you too, sitting at track meets or at basketball games or whatever the feat was, FEAT folks, the people, they would make jokes. But as they're playing cards, preparing for the meet, to relax. But Tommie would just sit back and watch things, how they happen. So I became scorekeeper.
Okay.
Everywhere we went, that was I was doing. In Tokyo in 1967, when I made that statement, anything could happen. The little indigenous newspaper person asked me that there is talk of a black Olympic boycott. Caught me by surprise. And I looked at him real funny and I said, well, there's a possibility for anything to happen. Before I got back to the US, Smith said there would be a boycott. I was trapped in that belief, but I was entitled, because of who I was, what I was, the events I held world records in, to respond to a need for somebody to step up and lead. And that's what I did. A long answer to a very smart question, but that's what
So Lee Evans, he was really key in going around and trying to persuade all of the other black athletes to join this boycott.
Lee Evans and Tommie Smith grew up together, but we didn't know who we each were. In the grape fields in California, there were long rows with high bushes and the grape was underneath. So if you get underneath and cut the grapes and they fall and you spread them out and all that stuff. I noticed for a couple of years, this little black kid was always near me, and the grape bush, we'd pop out here over the mountains and pop back. That was Lee Evans. And we didn't know this until we got to college, that Lee, I cut grapes in Madera, California, and Fresno, California is only 36 miles away. He said, Tommie, was that you, man? Man, you sure were fast. You still got those long legs. We became friends at age 9 to 12 and didn't know it until we got to college. So we became very close to college. And he is the person that enticed the idea of, man, you have to join the OPHR. And I asked him, what's the OPHR? And he told me. I thought it was relevant, and I owed it for development of the mind of those who had no platform. And that's how I joined the OPHR, through Lee Evans. Yes, you're right. Another long answer to a short question, yeah.
You can give me really long answers.
Thank you very much.
And so that relationship and how that formed and how all of the other athletes were they up for doing a boycott? Because there was, it was quite difficult as an athlete myself. I know that would be a very challenging kind of
very
request.
challenging, because they the athletes on the American team was from different parts of the country. And in the South, which was a bit quieter than the North, because that's where the slaves were dropped off and the generations happened there. And they migrated from the East Coast across the plains of Kansas and all those places into California. And I was a Texas kid that moved to California with the rest of my brothers and sisters in 1951 to do the cotton and the corn, do the labor work, because we were a labor family. What's your question?
So this is all a part of it. This is
all a part of it. So you got to help me out here.
How did those athletes respond? I mean, Lee Evans was going up to them and saying, listen, we want you to boycott. We don't want you to compete in the Olympic Games. They trained, for years and years, and he was asking them to give up that amazing opportunity.
Anytime and this is for everybody out there too, students also. Anytime in your feet for a position and you climb that ladder, you're blessed to climb that ladder, you became a top source in a community, you owe time, you owe a resolution of giving back to those who are behind you so they can climb that same ladder. They know that if they did it, you can do it too. You almost have to entice the younger generation to do things, but that calls for a program. It has to be known why you're doing what you're about to do. Program, you have to have a curriculum. Curriculum is things in that program that's going to make that program grow. And by doing all this, I wanted to make sure that it was proactive, moving forward, a generation moving forward, proactively colorless in terms of love and that respect. And it gave me a chance to climb a ladder to the victory stand and hope that people would hear the silent voice. Because that silent voice was your voice, because you didn't know anymore what that podium would bring than I did. I was a sacrificial person making a gesture of need, not only educationally, but need racially to understand the need of communication. Therefore, the need of communication might spawn the differences in looks, might bring about a reality and why it's necessary to generate thought process of living together, though it's, we talked about that earlier, living together, though the colors were different.
And so the social context of the time that the film has depicted so brilliantly in terms of Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King, how did that overlay and how did that affect you personally? Dr.
Martin Luther King, Dr. King was a pacifist, just the opposite direction of Malcolm X, but going in the same direction. One's any means necessary, the other, no matter what happened to you, don't strike back in hate. Going the same direction, but one nonviolent, the other one any means necessary. And that victory stand represents to most people a belief of racist tendency or militancy, because it was two black young men on the victory stand with their head bowed, their fists raised to the air in strength, bare feet shoeless, to prove poverty, the poverty chain of black Americans, in the literary category in the cities we call it gee whiz.
Poverty.
No, I'm gonna get it. Just keep breathing.
It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, he's coming. Yeah. What is his wife dealing with the issues which everybody should have the same right?
Unity, democracy,
yeah.
Equality.
You'll get it before you get home.
Dolores will get it. She'll jump in.
And so we had to make a stand, make a move, make a visible stand, a righteous stand to create a fellowship of communication. Okay. Now, the racist tendencies of America was rampant, especially when it came to the congressional need to understand the Constitution. Those who were abiding by the Constitution had no power to do anything but admit to the status quo. We as young black athletes had plans to make the status quo change, that it would represent those who had no representation before. And you might say, what did you know about representing? We didn't know as much as those knew who made the rules or made the laws, adhering to the status quo and keeping some of those people in categories which were not cooperative to the Constitution of the United States. So we did not try to cure the problem, only bring attention to the need through sacrifice for the equity of equality. For the institutionalized racist tendencies had to be challenged some way. Yes, before me you had Jack Johnson, you had Muhammad Ali going back that way, you Jackie Robinson all the way back. But never one time, not one time, there was a band of young black athletes vying together to prove a point that America needs work in its tendency of a created effort to rid the system of racism. And again, there was a program, how are we going to do this? We started with 4 points. We started with 4 points. One, to remove one of the most racist entities in America who ruled the American athletes. That was Avery Brundage, who was president of the IOC. We wanted him out, period. Okay, you can ask me, did he die? I mean, was he out later? We'll see.
He is dead.
Yeah, I said it, yeah. Number two was more coaches in the junior college, in the junior high school, and college banks who were of color. 38% of high school, junior college and four-year college athletes were black. 2% black coaches. Didn't make sense. And we thought, why not create an avenue for black kids to be coached by black folks? We just wanted equity. We didn't want to flower the branch of the tree to get so heavy to make it fall with its own fruit. We just wanted equity. People don't understand that. Number three was Muhammad Ali's return his title. His title was taken away, most of you know, because he did not want to go to Vietnam and kill folks that did not do anything to him, did not harm him at all. In America, the historical process. Then more housing on campuses for people of color. So we brought about a understanding of a need to change, of a need to move or change. It wasn't radical. The victory stand was to a lot of people because they didn't know why we were there. We did not have a chance to speak. But now, not only am I speaking and trying to create an understanding out of an audience, but you also are speaking in your own way. Hopefully you're speaking in your own way. You don't have to be a world-class athlete to have your own platform.
Yeah. And so there was one last one, wasn't there, about disinviting South Africa to the Olympics as well?
Well, probably the most physical and the most instant is disallowing South Africa and Rhodesia from competing in the Olympic Games because of their racist tendencies athletically.
And
There's
so
history of that.
If you take us through that, you know, that dramatic coming out from underneath the tunnel, you take us along that journey, out onto the rostrum, the conversations you had before, what you felt like when you were up there, and you take us through, and then when you left, can you kind of live that with us now?
John and Tommie knew that we had to, because of the OPHR, or the Olympic Project for Human Rights, which started at San Jose State, we had to end it in a way that seeing is believing. The constitutionality of us doing it was negative to those people who believe that athletics should not be involved in politics. One of the biggest lies you can ever hear, because those were the status quo folks trying to hold on to the longing power they had over the younger athletes, which was AAU. Now there's no such thing as AAU professional. AAUs are for 18 years down. We thought, I called my wife a day before and asked her, would she bring me some gloves? Well, we didn't know. We did not know. And she asked me, why? I said, I don't know, just bring me some gloves, woman, just bring me some gloves. She brought the gloves with her because the wives did not come with the athletes. They came on later on because they could not ride on the athlete's airplane. Then when I got my gloves, I knew that I was going to use them, but I didn't know why. But I knew why I wanted to use them because of the forces of the OPHR and the need for young black athletes to become involved in a world that was rolling over on us. Faith. That might come up later from somebody out there. Faith. I always had faith as a non-secular kid. You don't try to cure the problem with doing the work all at once. You got to maintain an attitude that it's going to get done. You have to give it time to get done. So faith, substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, but without work, faith is dead. I depended on that. I took my stuff to the altar and left and walked away and hoped that it would happen. Non-secular belief. I told John what I was thinking. He said, yeah, that's good. I shared my gloves with him. And I told him what I was going to do. But John, you do what you think is necessary, because at the end of that meeting we had in Denver, Colorado, by the black athletes, 3 days before, we said, no, there will not be a boycott, but represent yourselves according to how a country represented you. Show your effect, show your heart. That left each athlete up to do what he wanted. Not do your own thing, man, not about that. Too many lives at stake for that. That's how Tommie Smith came up with the stand of solidarity. Not a Black Power salute, like people say, a Black Power salute. Call it what you want. But I know how I felt on that victory stand. Every time I see part of that victory stand, I kind of tear up, just a little bit, because I can feel myself. Because I'm that little 23-year-old, 4-year-old kid who was up there on that victory stand, hoping I wouldn't get shot while my national anthem was being played. I know I had a wife and a 6-month-old son I had to raise once I got back to California without a college degree.
And so Peter Norman was with you, the Australian who came second. And in today's world of the Me Too campaign and needing allies that look different to us, how important was it that Peter stood with you with the Olympic
Peter had really nothing to do with the OPHR. He was in Australia, we was in America. He was going to school there, we were going to school here. But again, if you notice a tad bit of Australian history, their problem was Aboriginal. That was their problematic black folks. Here you have an Australian coming to a third world country talking about human rights. Human rights also conveys civil intent, okay? They saw this button on Peter Norman, the Olympic Project for Human Rights. That was their reason to destroy this young man because he wore Olympic Project for Human Rights button. Had he not worn the button, I don't think him being banned from everything, including his life, which he died of a massive heart attack a few years after. And I think that had something to do with his not being recognized as one of Australia's top athletes. This man should have made the 1972 Olympic team. No one had beaten his time, and he was still active. But he didn't even get invited to run. He was banned from running.
So
let me see now. I don't know if you asked that question about Peter.
No, that's all good.
Okay.
Tommie, we're good. We're having a good time, aren't we, people?
Yeah.
This is amazing. This is wisdom. This is wisdom. And so, this is love. We are here with you. So there is no right or wrong to any of this. We're having a conversation.
I'll put a bucket outside the door that says cash.
Yeah. Just on that, Peter Norman, he suffered greatly, and they've just announced, actually, just a few days ago, that he will have a statue in Melbourne. So just kind of moving on a little bit, in his name. I mean, you were the first athlete to break 20 seconds, for the 200 meters. Tommie Smith was like the Usain Bolt of his time, and nobody actually gives that any kind of credence. I mean, and you were cut off in your prime. And to me, that's like incredible. I would have been fuming about that. I mean, how did you feel? 1987, 1983, the world record. I
did that with an injured left leg. I pulled that left leg muscle in the semi before the race, before the final. It felt very positive. Very positive. I could not think negative because I took it to the altar and left it there and said, whatever happens is going to happen. But I sure did want to win that race. But I couldn't practice. They iced it for 45 minutes, and the groin area muscle, you guys, if you know where that is, no ice belongs there. No ice allowed. But they did it. And they numbed the muscle, and it was about 45 minutes before I ran the race. So I had to be very careful. Although it's an adductor muscle that keeps the appendages into the body. It's an adductor muscle, not a fast muscle where you would hurt it even if you jog. This muscle, it would destroy your body if your legs went out of line or was out of line, like I pulled it and finished. Not during the race, I pulled that race and finished. So I had to be very careful. And I knew I had to be very careful. And I just had finished my subject in kinesiology and biology, so I knew that, wait a minute. You have a whole lot of things in the body that you can change over and use different ways if you knew how. And I watched everybody practice. Then I visualized myself running that race. Self-imaging is called. Try it sometime. Don't think of what you had to do. Just do the work and think about the creation of happiness after it's finished. Okay? Have you ever been so hungry that you could just eat up anything? Then you're miserable. Then you ate, and after you finished eating, you were sick because you what? Overate. Too much of anything is not good. Too little of the same is just as bad. That's the way life is. So go through life with actualities of life and death, too much and too little. Anyway,
So, when white supremacist Avery Brundage decided to tell you and John to go home,
oh,
2
he
days
told me and
after-
John not
Yeah.
to come before we even got there because we had already been talking
He
about.
sent Jesse Owens to say that to you.
He
though,
said,
didn't he?
yes, indeed, she sure did. He said, he banned Jesse Owens in 1936 because after Jesse Owens destroyed his way of thinking and Hitler's way of thinking, he was obliged to ban Jesse Owens because Jesse Owens would not stay in Europe to run any more races to make money for the AAU. He wanted to go home because he just got married, and folks back in those days, you know that airplanes wasn't too readily used in those days, so they had ships. So it took you 7 days to get home. When he got home, he found out that he was banned from competition, never to run again internationally. Why? Because he didn't do what the president of the USOC at that time wanted him to do. Instead of him going home taking care of his family, Avery Brundage wanted him to stay there and make more money.
But he tried to persuade you not to do anything at the 68
Oh,
game.
he warned.
He warned you.
Persuasion, there's a little bit different
Oh, sorry,
thing.
sorry,
Sorry.
okay,
Yeah. So he threatens, if you do anything, if any American athletes were coming to this world-class event and prohibit the excellence in physical competition among the entire world by doing something stupid like these boys want to do, call us boys, these boys want to do, they will be promptly sent home. Now, he is the president of the IOC, not the USOC, okay? So he got out of it by telling the president of the USOC, don't let them do anything. If they do anything, the entire team will be sent home. The entire team will be sent home. So what happened, we did something that put the American team in jeopardy. He had a second thought that if they're not sent home, I am going to ban the rest of the team. So we went home. We didn't want the rest of the team to be banned, so we came home. But when we got home, there was nobody at the airport because nobody in the airport knew that we were coming home so early. So that's how we got there.
And what was that like, that time, that aftermath for you? There was a wilderness there. There were the death threats. There was lots and lots of issues around employment, poverty. Give us an insight into what that was like for you.
We were students when we left, working hard to get an education. That's what Tommie went there for. And I had a job washing cars before I left. The only way I could make any money, washing cars, because we talked about Olympic proposed boycott before we left, and we gave points of why the boycott was needed, but nothing was done. So the proposed boycott died, but we ended it up with a visual adjustment of the needs continuous. So when we got back to San Jose, nobody was there to meet us because we were flown back under suspicion, meaning we had to leave without anybody knowing we were gone. And when I got back, I left with one month behind. When I got back, I was 2 months rent behind, and my job was gone. They fired me. They would also eliminate me from my ROTC job. I was a Reserve Officers Training Corps. I was in ROTC. I wanted to go to the Army and serve my country. Isn't that amazing? I wanted to be a police officer. Isn't that amazing? I wanted to become a school teacher. These are my 3 needs. Anyway, my 3 needs. And the only thing I had when I came back was a reason to continue my education, and I did. From no education to a BA to an MA to a PhD, and I kind of proud of
So
it.
there were some really dark times there.
Yeah.
And during that time, what did you learn? What did you, I've heard you speak about this before, about the redemption and the sacrifice of redemption.
I always believed, and I think Dr. Martin Luther King spoke of this more time because his ecumenical background, his pride of doing what he thought was necessary, the unification of the humankind, totally, the purification of mixing. That was his idea. And I was very happy to be one who was sacrificed for some of those same reasons that he sacrificed for. So it didn't bother me if I gave up something so others could receive something. And my blessing was I made it through what happened to Tommie Smith after the victory stand. I always believe and still do that sacrificing for something that's good for the human race is redemptive. And that redemption brought me out of that storm of hate because I didn't change what I believed in. And that's what I taught in my school education. Although school education had a curriculum, folks, I didn't go in there teaching what Tommie Smith thought. I teach what Tommie Smith did, and I taught what the curriculum told me to teach. That's law, that was law.
So the redemptive power of sacrifice then kind of took away the hate.
If you're out there and you have that and you have wondering why, don't stop. Continue to do it if you believe it. Continue to do what you know if you believe it. But I would suggest to you, I hope it's socially positive.
And so bringing it up to date right now, we have sports activism. It's one of its greatest heists at the moment, with Colin Kaepernick taking a knee against police brutality, the killings of black people. Gender equality being, Serena Williams striving for that on the tennis courts. Do you think that what you've done in terms of your actions paved the way for the sports activism of today?
I think it has, but I didn't do their work. I did my work to make them realize that they also had a job to do.
Of course.
My first college job, oh my goodness, was at a four-year college as athletic director and head women's basketball coach. And Title IX was a big thing then. And I was banged all over that campus by the administration because I took that new gym that they had that women were not allowed to enter, split it down the middle, and the women had one side and the men had one side. And when there was a basketball game, they both used the same basketball court, different times, of course. And I was vilified for that. But it wasn't nearly the type that I had coming off the victory stand. It was something I had to do educationally. Of course, I was fired, but that's...
Yeah, of course. So women, in terms of their activism role within the OPHR movement, and also within your life, in terms of the support that you've had for women, has been key.
Of course, and I still do that on a national level and hopefully a world understanding. And you yourself have been involved in it also, and it's not easy. That's still the freedom of expression, and gender equity is very necessary. In fact, the Olympic Project for Human Rights was backed by some of the most powerful women on that team, and they on the American team. And they are wives now of Olympians who understood the same principles, and they were quiet when we were out front working. We had very, very strong black women backing us.
That's not a surprise. Black
You're
women
right.
backing black men. So, just I have one last question, and then we're going to get to the crowd. 50 years on, knowing what you know now, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Not a thing.
Oh, look at
Not
that.
a
Look
thing.
at that, the courage.
Not a thing.
Courage. And so I have been slightly remiss because I'm known for keeping things to time, but this has been the best interview of my life, and so I've kind of gone over a little bit. We have some questions from Twitter. I think we're going to have 10 minutes, if that's okay, Helen, for some Q&A. I am quite firm when it comes to Q&A because we need to make sure that people answer the question and don't just stand up and give us a soliloquy. There are some roaming mics around, and let's please keep your questions quite short. Anybody have some questions for Tommie? Right, we have the lady right there in the middle. Mike's going to get to you. Who's going to get there first? Wonderful.
Thank you.
First of all, Tommie, I have to say you should be up there with Muhammad Ali, Martin Luther King as one of the black greats. You don't get half the recognition you should. Has any of today's or subsequent generations ever thanked you for what you've done? Any of the athletes that come after you who, because of your stand, had equal rights?
So have any athletes of today thanked you for your contribution back in the day?
Every day, I go to grammar schools and I look in their faces. That's a thanks to me that I could be there to just talk to them because they don't have any questions yet. But just by my taking time to talk to the students, talk to the younger generation, not only does them good for getting out of a class, But it helps me understand the need to continue to do what I'm doing because the elders or the elders who are the instructors find it necessary to bring me in to talk to the children about their growth, their health, their awareness of their surroundings. And the basic, most understanding thing, maybe you look different, but you've got the same type heart.
So I know you've met Colin Kaepernick. Has he said thank you? Are the sporting greats of today, have they kind of, what have they said to you?
I met Colin in New York, and we did talk about his understanding of the system. Colin and I grew up in the same area of California, so we had an idea of hard work, of racist tendencies in the system, and what he did it because he believed it, not because he did it to be a model. Yeah. He did it because it was very necessary, and he did not use irrational terms saying how bad it was, only that it needs changing, and the repetitious idea of those who believe that because shouldn't exist, because it already exists the best it possibly can, sociologically speaking. No, wrong. Change is very obvious. If you don't change as the world turns, you're going to get crushed by the weight of stupidity.
And Lara, if that's true, dropping some wisdom tonight, Lara Datta from Twitter has said, and so what's your opinion on the Nike ad campaign with Colin Kaepernick?
Oh, fine, you go, bro. You go on in,
right.
take that money, that's
you
right.
You go, bro.
Yeah.
Right, any other questions? Let's keep it moving. Gentleman in the front there.
Can I have 2 questions?
One question, please.
Did Jesse Owen apologise to you?
Did Jesse Owen apologise?
Apologize? Did Jesse Owen apologize? That's what you said, right? Yeah. To whom?
To you.
No, I mean,
so
no. That's a new one.
In terms of... because he tried to convince you not to protest. Later on in life, did he apologise because he recognised...
Oh, no. He was paid to do this. Jesse Owen had to come back home. Well, but I didn't. No. Jesse Owen was paid to come back to Mexico City to try to convince us athletes that we shouldn't do what we did. If we needed a job, we should see him and he could give us a job. But see, Jesse Owen didn't have a job then. So we knew that he was in trouble already. Jesse Owen was paid by the people who banned him from competition. That was the Olympic Committee. But
later on in life, before Jesse died, he had a conversation with John Carlos about how he felt that they were doing the same thing, but they were doing it in different ways. And so there was always some kind of tension there around the way in which Jesse decided to protest and the ways in which John and Tommie decided to protest.
I want to know, how did he protest, Jesse Owens? What?
He didn't protest, so he's saying, should he have apologised to you? Did he ever apologise to you?
Oh, no. I'm kind of lost in that rhetoric for that. No. He didn't owe me an apology. Jesse Owens didn't owe Tommie Smith an apology. He tried to save our futures by saying what we did we shouldn't do because we won't be able to get jobs when we came back to America.
Okay, we're moving on to another question. Yeah. Let's go over to this side. There's a gentleman over there.
Hi, brilliant to be here. Question, without the black glove, how would white America view if it was without the gloves? Just a black face?
I wouldn't know. My hand still would have been black. I just wanted to accentuate the reason why there should be a change. I wanted people to see it. And that was my idea of the black glove.
And the lady up there in the blue, yes, you with your hand up, yeah?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm from California. My dad went to San Jose State, so I'm really excited that you're here. And I really want to know about education and sport and how that really seemed to interleaked in you being great an athlete, but then also the education helping you even becoming a better one. So I was just wondering, 1968 was also an amazing time for education in the US. I was wondering if you can just comment on that.
That's well, yeah, good question. That was very mindfully important. And I mentioned earlier, we had to stay in school, we had to keep a 2.0, or we would have been disqualified from competition. Now, check this out. A lot of the athletes receive grades without going to class, okay? Just so the college could keep them on teams to win to beat other teams. Okay, that was a very good stickler in the Olympic Project for Human Rights. If you don't go to class, you should not compete, whether with a grade or without a grade. Understanding the fact that you're in school for an education, you were blessed to get a scholarship because of your physical attitude of going to college and getting that scholarship. You know, so one shook the hand of the other. But there were some of us too stupid because we thought people cared enough about us to give us an education so we could be cool. No, you use that education to better yourself in a system which need identification of an education in the first place. We were just blessed to get a scholarship to do it because we knew colleges wanted great programs. Bear Bryant was the first Southern coach to recruit black athletes on his team. And when he did that, he started winning championship, unbelievable, and the other white coaches did the same thing. So they used us for a reason, so black athletes should take that as a warning and use them as they use our physical abilities to become better citizens in the country of identification. Then when you get there, you have a job to maintain and let other young athletes know how you got there and what you did with your education.
And another question.
I just wanted to ask, obviously in 1968 would have been a significant time in terms of the struggles against racism, in terms of comparing it to today's world where we see white supremacy in the White House and we see white supremacy throughout Europe and even in this country. So how are you thinking in those terms of that struggle that you fought in 1968 and what's happening in the world right now, especially in Europe and in the US, in terms of racism?
Olympic Project for Human Rights, son. That's the identification enough in our belief, the guys on the victor stand. We can't cure all the problems, but we'd like for others to view what we did and use their own cranial capacity to identify the need to sacrifice for a better unity in our country. You know, it's a sociological move for it to happen. But I can't come to you and tell you to do something because you need a victory stand. You're not going to get a victory stand, but you do have a stand. Just make it victorious and go to class and get those grades. You teachers in here have a responsibility too, and I think you know it. Some mornings you get up and look at yourself in the mirror and you might say, oh no, not again. I did it a lot of times.
Okay, I'll segue. The two last questions. So one.
Basketball star Charles Barkley said that sports people should not be role models, shouldn't be seen as role models. What's your view on that?
Okay, tell me.
Charles Barkley says that sports people shouldn't be role models. What's your view?
Sports people should
not be role models.
Should not be seen.
So what do you think about athletes being role models and the
Oh,
responsibility?
role models. I didn't know. Role models. Okay? Come on.
There's some like accents going on here. I'm South London. We've got a Mancunian. We've got all sorts going on. Role models. Role models.
I think it's a responsibility to be seen. Yes, I do. And just so happens all athletes are not role models. Charles Barkley didn't want to be a role model. He identified that he's not good to be a role model.
Yeah,
so he shut his mouth and remained. Charles Barkley knows that he's funny. He knows that the ignorancy is one of his ways of making people listen. So he's a millionaire, isn't he? Being stupid. It's okay.
I think there was one more question over here. Let's give it some juice. It's our last question. No pressure.
I just wanted to ask about student activism in 1968 and you coming up in that period. So I used to work at the University of Wyoming, where the Black 14, also inspired by Harry Edwards and your guys' struggle at San Jose State, took a risk and they got fired from the team, they got kicked out of the campus, and they were never able to get their degrees. And they said, when I talked to them, that a lot of the reason they got involved with activism was because of their experience of discrimination on campus. That they experienced discrimination in housing, they experienced discrimination in the classroom, they experienced discrimination in all areas that many of us probably are also organizing around issues today on campuses. So I was wondering if you could tell me about your experience on campus, if there was stuff that was going on campus that shaped your decision to get involved with activism in the 60s.
Before I got there, there was reasons, because I was discriminated against even in the cotton field. So my rolling through system, it just snowballed. Yes, you're right. One of the most important facts of the OPHR or the Olympic Project for Human Rights, or housing to the black students or the black athlete. I myself approached apartment complexes with the big sign in the window, apartments for rent, or welcome. I walk in and see the shades pulled before I got there. So me and my roommate went back and got some white women, and we stood on the outside and watched them go in. Shades opened up, the door was open, and they went in and came out with some apartments. And we asked them, thank you for the keys. Yeah, you're right. I know what Wyoming is talking about, but you have to be smart enough to find a way to necessitate the reason for being in the first place. You just got to do that. We caught hell for doing it, but we stayed there. Then we moved out. And that's what it was. Yeah, Wyoming was right. But women, black women had the same problems as the black athlete. Black athlete women have the same problem as the black athlete man because of blackness.
And so, on that note, we're going to bring this to a close. Tommie Smith has been amazing. He has dropped some wisdom on us. He has shared his majestic spirit with us, and we are eternally grateful and very thankful. A big, big hand of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You're good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My leaving here. How many school teachers do we have in the room? Okay, so you just heard just a little bit of another curriculum we have to do is it's called Working Harder. How many grammar school people do from 1st to the 8th grade do we have in the room? Oh, is it really? I'm not in the right place for that, am I?
Yeah,
oh, okay.
Elementary school,
Sorry.
primary school.
Okay, you can go home now.
Okay, no. 2 minutes of your time, because we have to thank some people today, because it wouldn't be possible without, please take a seat. Today wouldn't be possible without Dolores, Tommie's wife. Kunle Ololode made this happen, not as a chief executive of Voice for Change, but because he's a volunteer that is committed to the struggle. He has made this happen. Please give big respect to Kunle. Dr. Helen Beebe and Dr. Claire Alexander at the University of Manchester and your team, thank you for putting this on. And to each and every one of you that have come out today, have contributed, have been brilliant with your questions, no soliloquies, I'm so thankful. You have been amazing. You have been the best audience so far. I've been with Tommie up and down the country, mostly on these, in these events, and this has been a great space and a great place to be. We can feel the love in the room. There's one last thing that I would like to ask of you. We're going to ask a few people up here to have a photo. We don't have a professional photographer, so we're going to take a photo ourselves. And I would ask you to take that photo, and I would ask you to put that on social media, to talk to other people, to talk about what you've heard tonight, to talk about the sacrifice that black people have made in history and what that means today. So we're going to get some people to stand, and we're going to have a photo, and I'd like you to take that photo, and I'd like you to put hashtag Tommie Smith onto Twitter and onto Instagram and onto Snapchat or whatever you'd like to do. Is that okay, people? Yes? Okay. So I would like to invite Omar Khan, the director of the Running Me Trust. I'd like to invite Kunle up here. I'd like to invite Dr. Claire Alexander and Dr. Helen Beebe and Delois Smith to come up here, and we're going to stand in a line with Tommie Smith and have our photos taken.
Very good, very good.
Delois, right here, right here. And we're going to put these.
There you go. There's the one.
No, it's just, this is our work. This is our work. Right, 1, 2, 3. Tommie Smith. 1, 2, 3. Tommie Smith. We good? We done? Great. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.